Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope this video finds you doing well. My kitten has a toy, and I just don't have the heart to take it away from him, so if you hear a little noise in the background during this video, that's most likely what it is. He gets so forlorn looking if you take his toy. This video is a little different than what I have been posting lately. I've been posting videos where I show you something cool about Linux and different ways to do things. This video will most likely display my ignorance. And if you want to straighten me out, please go right ahead, because I'm trying to figure out exactly what is going on with Ubuntu these days. So let me give you a little background before we get into me talking about trying to figure out what's going on. Last week I ran updates on two laptops that I have. Both of them are running Ubuntu 22.04 LTS Vanilla. And these have been very reliable and stable machines on that distribution. One of the machines, after updates, booted up and worked just fine, and the other one came up with no Wi-Fi at all. So I started looking around to figure out what was going on. I discovered that I had been upgraded, and I am quoting that, to the hardware enablement stack kernel on Ubuntu 22.04 LTS. In other words, I believe that what happened is that I had been upgraded from 22.04 to 22.04.1. And we'll talk about Ubuntu versioning and everything like that a little later in the video. Well, on the one machine where I didn't have to have drivers for the Wi-Fi, there was no issue. On the old Dell that has Broadcom drivers, for whatever reason, they did not build in the new kernel. So what I did is booted the machine off the old kernel. Sure enough, the Wi-Fi drivers were working just fine there. I uninstalled the 5.19 kernel that had been installed, and therefore I couldn't accidentally boot back into it and then not have access to the internet. And then I went off to see if I could figure out what was wrong. It took me a while to find, but the main thing that I wanted to do first was figure out a way to prevent Ubuntu from moving me to the hardware enablement stack kernel. I don't like that, and I'll talk more about that why here in just a minute. So what I ended up with was this command that I could run, sudo apt install, this is -- install -- recommend, or -recommends there, and this way you tell Ubuntu that you would like to be on the standard LTS kernel and you don't want to be upgraded to HWE, hardware enablement. This is something that I've never had to do in Ubuntu before. So I went ahead and did it, and that way I didn't have to worry about it. But then I got curious. I was like, what exactly is going on? Why is it that my Broadcom drivers are not working in kernel 5.19 when they were working in kernel 5.15? So I went searching, and about 24 hours later, after all of this was said and done, I came up with this on the Ubuntu discourse page, which is where all of the developers and contributors can talk to one another. This isn't necessarily for public consumption, but it is available. So therefore, it seems that the DKMS package does not work in Ubuntu 22.10 install media. Now, this is a late bug. This would have happened in October, right? And basically it affects systems where you are building drivers that are non-native to the kernel. And in this case, we're talking about the Broadcom drivers, and so therefore they obviously qualify, because that seems to be what happened here. And I am guessing at this point, because I don't know, it's just the discussion of a bug. I can't find any other information about it. It would seem to me that they would fix it before upgrading everyone to the new HWE enablement kernel. That's a hardware enablement kernel, which I don't want, because the machines that I'm running are 10 years old. I don't want it so much that what I have done in the past with Ubuntu, instead of downloading the version of Ubuntu that you find on the Ubuntu webpage right here, which is usually the latest dot release, in this case it's 22.04.1 LTS, Jammy Jellyfish, I will actually navigate to this page, which has all of the Ubuntu old releases. And it's kind of old looking. It looks like something that you would run on FTP. And you just find the release that you're looking for and then scroll down all of these different images of this release until you get to the one that you want. And the one that I want is the desktop, and I want the original release that came out before there were any dot releases. I don't want to be moved up to a dot release. I want to stick with the original LTS kernel, and I just want you to keep updating it. Linux Mint, for instance, if you install it and don't touch it, it will just stay on the LTS kernel unless there's a really good reason for moving you up. So on this machine, which is running Linux Mint right now, if I do that, you see that we are on 5.4, and it's on revision 139. That's perfectly all right with me. I am running really old hardware. I don't need updates. And I find it a little bit disturbing that Ubuntu wants to upgrade me in an update without telling me that they're doing that. I don't mind them backporting features to the desktop necessarily, but when it comes to the kernel, leave me alone. Now, before anybody puts this in the comments, I do know that there are kernel tools available for Ubuntu, and that all one has to do is install one, and you'll get a kernel tool very similar to what happens with Linux Mint here. So for those of you who don't know, if we open up the update manager, which I usually don't run because I do everything from the command line, but we'll open this up, and it says I got a couple of updates. As a matter of fact, it's looking for a kernel update. No, it's a Linux firmware. Scared me there for a second. I was like, no, don't do it to this machine, please. Anyway, there's a Linux kernels tool here. Yes, I know this can mess up the computer. And when you look at this, these are all of the kernels that Ubuntu is currently supporting. The different series of kernels right here. So, right, this machine is on 5.4, but we could be running 5.19, which is the most recent right there. That is a hardware enablement kernel, boys and girls. And that's a bunch of different Ubuntu kernels, which is different, by the way, than the generic Linux kernel that you hear about being released from Linus Torvalds and the Linux Foundation. No, every distribution puts their own spin on the kernel. That's why we have distributions. The Ubuntu lifecycle and release cadence is a mystery wrapped up in a conundrum for a lot of people. And it's just because they usually have so much going at once. They have the long-term support releases that they do every 2 years, and it's usually an even year. So right now, the current long-term support release is 2204. But every 6 months, they come out with a new one. So the current interim release is 2210, which is apparently running the 5.19 kernel. And here we have a lovely chart that Canonical posts to show you how all of this works and works over time. And for most users, this is terribly confusing. And like I said earlier, you could get a kernel tool in Ubuntu that would make it easier for you to do this, but I shouldn't have to. All I should have to do is to install the LTS, and then that's it. I shouldn't have to worry about them forcing updates down my throat. Now, in case you thought I was done complaining, I'm not. Let us go ahead and close this web page. And let's open up a terminal and make it real big so everybody can see what's going on. And I am going to log into my Ubuntu machine that's up and running. And it says I got 0 updates, but I bet it's a lie. So let's run sudo apt update. Wow. Hit the right keys, it helps. Sudo apt update. And this will go out, tell me what the upgradable stuff is. Go ahead and get those updates real quick. And of course it's taking its time because I'm doing this in a video. Ordinarily this takes about 10 seconds. Everybody's out there like, would you get to the point, man? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run updates here. Sudo apt. We'll go ahead and do a full dist upgrade, which means that we will get kernels and things like that. All right, now, before I move forward, look carefully here. The following packages have been kept back. Apparently, Ubuntu has decided these days that they're going to release updates in waves. So you'll see on my computer right here that we have several different packages that are being held back. Mainly these software properties here and also Python. And then if I would continue with this upgrade, then I would get this bunch here, the release upgrader. GTK. That one scares me because that makes me wonder if that's one of the things that is changing this over. We'll see what happens. I don't understand that one either. I read somewhere an article where they had said that they were doing it in phases so that they could put updates on some machines to see whether there were any problems before they released them to everybody. Isn't that using your user base as beta testers? Isn't that kind of strange? The bottom line here, boys and girls, before I wrap up this video is that Ubuntu 22.04 has turned out to be a really weird duck. And a lot of people that I have talked to have been telling me that there's all kinds of little things going on. There's little bugs, there's little problems that we haven't seen in years past from Canonical. Also, there seems to be this attitude at Canonical these days that we're going to try and outthink the user. You know, when you install Ubuntu, and they've done this for the last few releases, they want to automatically install upgrades. And you have to jump in and before that starts working and turn it off when you install if you want to do that. Like get to the software updater program and, you know what I mean? Turn that off real quick if you don't want that to happen. I don't like that because I want to make the decision whether I'm going to update my machine. I don't like them holding back the packages. I have yet to find anywhere where I can figure out how to turn that off. And the other thing is that lost my train of thought there. Holding back packages was the last thing I was talking about. And lastly is, why are you moving me up from an LTS to an HWE kernel without telling me? These are all issues. One of the reasons that people come to Linux, and one of the big sales points of Linux, is that we are in charge, not the distribution. All right? Ubuntu seems to be thinking more and more like Apple and Microsoft these days in the way they implement their distribution, which makes me less likely in the future to install it and use it when I can use other distributions, let's say like Linux Mint, where they don't do nothing without telling the user, usually. And it's a super stable experience. Plus, out of the box, they provide you the tools to graphically manipulate kernels, which you do not have in Ubuntu. Your comments. What do you think? Blow up the comment section on this video, and if you know better than I do and you say, hey, you got this bass backwards, tell me. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, gang. We'll talk again soon.